So, good morning and welcome.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Allan Hughes. I'm a chiropractor. I practice in Millbury. And welcome to those of you who are viewing at home or otherwise. Um, I'm here to talk today about meditation and stress free living, which is a kind of an auspicious title to think about what the possibilities of meditation can be. I started meditating many years ago, and it was an experience that created for me the opportunity to explore some aspects of the internal side of things that we're all pretty much exposed to. There's customs and traditions which include times of contemplation, times of thoughtfulness. Sometimes it's referred to as prayer. Every hospital that we've ever been to, the larger ones in particular, have rooms set aside. And the rooms are set aside for people who want quiet time. We often think of quiet time only in times of kind of personal urgency or a health issue for a loved one. But private time and time for us to kind of tune things down has become more and more important as the stress level seems to have risen. There's a variety of reasons why it's important for us from a health perspective, from a sense of our personal belonging, our personal place in the world, for us to reconnect with that. And I came across a study. Actually, it was a report of a series of studies that were done. This came out just a few weeks ago. And these were reports that came from the Centers for Disease Control. What they talked about, actually, they're called the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Something new and different.
Hmm.
Anyway, they looked at changes in the use of yoga and meditation between 2012 and 2017. And they came up with some very unusual things. I'm going to focus on meditation, obviously. But yoga and meditation are now officially the most popular alternative health approaches in the United States, each used by around 35 million adults. Well, that's a pretty staggering number. When I started doing meditation, it was very quietly done. And to see the evolving of meditation over time has been of great interest to me. And I have seen the results both in my practice and in the opportunities that I've had to talk with people about what the benefits of meditation can be. I'm going to quote from a few other parts of these studies. The CDC doesn't often delve into these kinds of issues. Typically, they're in more formal or orthodox medicine. Um, but they came up with some really interesting correlations, things that those of us who have followed the research about the benefits of meditation have seen from going back into the, let's say, the 1970s, 1980s. But the author of this article, and I'm going to quote a few things here,
Hmm.
as more Americans find that they're struggling with mental health issues like anxiety, distraction, and physical issues like chronic pain, they're seeking therapies that don't involve pharmaceuticals. And there was a neuroscientist at the University of Wisconsin who was widely quoted in this article, and uh, his statement to the interviewer was that there are many forces in our culture that have conspired to elevate anxiety, and stress. And that he has found that there's an increasing interest in strategies like yoga and meditation that can help people adjust to modern circumstances. So the idea of meditation being a kind of an escapist activity has really gone by the boards as more and more people are trying meditation. And there are more and more forms of meditation that people use. And I should say that although we are talking about a form called Jyoti meditation, and I'll hold this up so that people can take a look at what Jyoti is, Jyoti. Although I'm going to be speaking about Jyoti meditation today, um, I really endorse all the different meditations. There are many, many different kinds. Um, they are all different approaches. I liken them onto doorways opening onto the same room. Because the same place is really where all of us are going when we decide to do meditation, and that's a more peaceful and relaxed state. So, to quote further from these studies that the CDC and P have put together, meditation began somewhere around 2,600 years ago. That's the first recorded time that meditation was used, and was used as a tool for achieving clarity, peace of mind, and liberation from suffering. Once it became popular in the West, it took on some very different kinds of meanings. And to quote Dr. Davidson, that University of Wisconsin neuroscientist, he said it's really about exploring what the true nature of our mind is. It's more of an exploration, an investigation, an opening, a kind of an honesty about who it is that we really are. And there was an author of a book, a psychologist named Robert Wright, and his statement to the interviewer was that meditation is a discipline that liberates you from the tyranny of feelings. It's a technique for taking things ranging from anxiety to remorse to actual physical pain and gaining a perspective on them that somewhat releases you from their grip. And I'll speak a little bit more to those things in just a few minutes. But the recent research that scientists have done have shown that in clinical settings that meditation can reduce anxiety and depression as well as pain. Well, that's coming a very long way from the, as I mentioned before, the kind of escapist thoughts of meditation. We're very fortunate in this area to be so physically close to the Harvard Medical School, to Mass General, to the Benson Henry Institute, excuse me. These organizations are doing very high level research on meditation. They only take on topics that are going to yield certain benefits, or that the groundswell of scientific investigation has reached a point where they want to commit these kinds of resources. Um, there's a neuroscientist named Sarah Lazar at Mass General and the Harvard Medical School, who I believe it was in 2011 published results of a study that she had done on the effects of meditation. And her study group looked at the effects of people meditating. Many of these people had never meditated before, by the way. But looking at the effects of meditation on the brain itself. And so they did neural studies on this group of people that they picked for the study, and gave them instructions and encouraged them to practice meditation on a regular basis. And after 8 weeks, they were to come back in and again be examined with neural studies to see for any changes that took place. So after about 8 weeks, with an average daily usage of meditation of right around 27 minutes, the results that they found uh, were astounding. They were quite surprising because there were actual physical changes in brain structure that rather slowed down the effects of the peeling off of brain cells, which typically happens for us on a routine
In
basis,
just 8 weeks. Wow.
in just 8 weeks.
Wow.
So there's it took this theoretical understanding that meditating is good for relaxation, it's good for pain relief, it's good to lower blood pressure and to have people, attain a certain level of physical comfort. Now we're talking about high level central nervous system changes for the better in people. And of course you listen to those results and you think to yourself, if that's what's possible in just 8 weeks, with on the average of about 27 minutes a day of meditating, what else could be possible if we did this for an extended period of time? And they're in the process, research wise, of looking at some of those topics. And that has served as a jumping off point for several other research studies. And of course, other research institutes, both in the United States and elsewhere, have taken a look at that, and they are now delving into this. So, my point in bringing up all of this science is that for us to use meditation as a means to help us to manage a stressful environment that we're in, kind of splits us in between what parts of things occur that cause us stress that we can exert our influence or our control, and what parts do we simply have to learn how to manage what our internal or external response is to that stress. So the notion that we have within us the capability of being able to help us distinguish between our exuberant responses in both positive and negative ways, and looking at an alternative way for us to examine what contemplation really is, what that peacefulness that most of us talk about, that stress relief. I mean, we talk about going on vacations for that reason. We talk about, we've got the holidays right around the corner. We talk about getting together with loved ones for holidays. Those things are all geared around enriching us in ways because we feel like our tanks get emptied by just going through daily things. And the enhancing of those things are something that we look for. We look to relax and not be tied to a schedule and not be tied to our phones or any obligations that we might have. That's the exact same thing that we can accomplish each and every time that we sit to meditate. Because meditation is a conscious decision that we make to exert our control over our conscious mind and to indicate to the mind that we're going to use this time to withdraw our attention and our focus from all of the externals that come at us. And they come at us through our senses, and the mind controls those senses. And so the mind is always wanting us to be involved with procuring and consuming as much as our senses can bring to us. When we make that conscious decision, and by the way, we hold one conscious thought in our minds at a time, one. Our choice, always. Everything else that goes on is feedback or commentary that comes from the subconscious. And those things are important to us because they help protect us and they help inform us, and those are really important functions of how the subconscious works. But if we make a conscious decision that says, I'm going to take this time and I'm not going to plug into something to read, something to hear, something to eat or to taste or touch. And I'm going to take all of that energy that typically goes out and I'm going to bring all of that energy to a very specific point in my body and utilize that energy to help me do some exploring of what's on the inner side of each one of us. Some people have thought that meditation is not attainable because there's certain levels of knowledge or education that's necessary. That is absolutely not so. As a matter of fact, they're teaching meditation more and more in schools. And this last page of this report talks about the effects on kids. The Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry took a series of studies, and they looked at things that were happening with meditation in school-age children and found that there were significant positive effects on these children's executive functioning, on their attention, on depression, anxiety, stress, and on negative behaviors. And children are bringing a very unique perspective to meditation because children live more in the moment, in the here and now. We all used to be kids. We've just kind of forgotten that. Things have gotten more complicated. But kids are wonderful because they're not worried about things that might happen in the future. They are not contemplating things that occurred in the past or looking back with regret. Kids are really, for the most part, focused on what's happening in the here and now. That is a tool that we use in meditation that helps us to temporarily bring ourselves away from those aspects of living and allow us the opportunity to say instead, well, I know what it's like out here. I know what my senses bring to me. What if I were to take all of that energy and explore what it would be like to just sit quietly and see what unfolds? When we meditate, we are in essence explorers, inner explorers. And each one of us has the opportunity, has everything that we need in order to accomplish a meaningful meditation setting without any particular training, without any particular cost involved, without the background, if you will, of being involved in meditative or yogic studies or things of this sort. As these studies have shown us, people who were recruited for some of these studies had no background at all in the meditative arts, and yet they were able to accomplish all of these things. One of the chief objections that I get from people who have said, well, I've tried meditation, but I just can't stop my mind. My mind just goes and goes and just keeps producing thoughts and thoughts and more thoughts, and I just gave it up finally. It was just too frustrating. And my comment to that is, you are exactly the person who would benefit from meditation. We just need to find a way to help the mind to calm itself and to allow us to sit quietly enough, long enough, so that we can attain the benefits that we're looking for through meditation. The process in Jyoti meditation, we talk about bringing the focus to the eye center, to what's referred to as the third or single eye. It's a spot located between and behind the eyebrows. By doing that, we try to put the physical body at rest as best we can. So we find a comfortable place to sit. Some people like to meditate on their couches, on a comfortable chair. Some people like to put cushions on the floor They can sit cross-legged or with their legs out straight, with some back support. Back support's important. I'm a chiropractor. I'm always going to be thinking about that stuff. If we sit comfortably and we're not going to be disturbed, we leave our pets in the other room and we leave our electronic devices in the other room. And for our purposes, we don't use candles or chanting or incense or those sorts of things. Although in many other meditations, they are used quite successfully. Um, we also don't use the breath as a means of control during the meditation. Um, some meditations have you concentrating on your breath in and concentrating on your breath out and having particular experiences related to that. What the teachers of Jyoti meditation have found is that that's yet another opportunity for the mind to introduce a thought and to distract us. So, what we need to do, a great meditation teacher came up with a few really excellent suggestions about it. What we need to do is befriend our mind, to give the mind something to do so that we can experience the greatest amount of benefit from this time that we are investing. The idea that we're going to command our mind to browbeat ourselves into a state of, well, now I got to meditate now, that's it, forget it, everything. It doesn't work because our minds are us. They're part of us. They know and understand. The mind knows and understands everything about us. We are not going to fool the mind. We are going to ask the mind instead to repeat a name or names that are going to be effective. And that by repeating that name or names, the mind will be occupied. And so we use it to help distract the thoughts from coming in. By using the technique of both bringing our attention and our focus to this eye focus point, and then having the mind repeat any name or names that we choose, we can effectively manage the inflow of thoughts. Now, thoughts are never going to go away completely. Somebody at some point in psychology, I think, measured that it's an absurd number of thoughts that we have a day. 10,000? I don't know, 20,000? It's absurd to think that we are going to shut off that magnificent process within us that produces all of these things. We just want to borrow some time. We want some time so that we can deepen ourselves in a state of relaxation enough so that we can experience that which has been related to us, both through the 2,600 years that people have been doing meditating, and more importantly, in the last 40 or 50 years where active research has been done. We Westerners, we need convincing. We're not. We're a little skeptical about this sitting down business. This, just contemplating. We're very results oriented, very action oriented. Well, meditation can produce results that are tangible for us in the physical, as I was mentioning before, and with all of those studies. But there's something else that meditation brings to us. It's an opportunity for us to deepen ourselves, to reconnect with a part of us that we don't spend enough time with. Because we're so busy out in the world. Our ancestors took a 24-hour day and they were probably up and active for 12 or 14 of those hours. With the advent of artificial light and artificial heat, we began to expand all of that. And now, fast forward to 2018 plus, we have these devices that we call phones that can connect us within a few clicks to Tierra del Fuego if we want, or some bastion deep in the Himalayas. It's possible for us, with all of that access to all of that information, to say, I want to withdraw from that for a while. I want to remember what it's like to be in a place where I accomplish something, even though I'm just sitting. What we're going to accomplish through meditation, and we're going to do a practice meditation here in a little bit. What we want to accomplish with meditation is that there is this marvelous inner sense that all of us have. It's like a parallel track of our conscious thinking and our conscious activity. And frankly, it's been going on for as long as people have been meditating, and probably a lot longer than that. And it will continue long after we're gone, because these are things that have been described in inner quality states by people who have had near-death experiences, people who have been declared clinically dead and who have been brought back, have described in great detail this amazing series of experiences that they've had. And we've seen enough and read enough over the past 20, 30 years, actually since Dr. Raymond Moody back in the early 1970s and his team of medical researchers first established what life after death was really all about, that this place that these people described was incredibly similar to the written qualities that had been described for eons about what was possible when we simply sat and did not engage in the outer, but allowed this inner sense of us to come forward. All we're doing is that we are using this word or words that I mentioned before in a manner that is almost like autosuggestion. Now, these words can be from our cultural traditions. They can be concepts like peace or love or nature. Some people like to use the names of loved ones. What we need to do when we choose our name or names is choose them with the understanding that we simply want the mind to say that name, not to think about or what that name implies or what the situation is. We simply want to give the mind something to do. If we are successful at doing that, and by the way, this name or names that we choose, we can change it at any time. We can rearrange the order of them. What's important for us to remember is that by using them, we allow our degree of self-control. We impose this control, if you will, on ourselves. And that's really the only price that we pay for doing meditation. We don't exclude experiences that are really going on at all times during our conscious or waking times. But we're just busy. We're busy having things come at us. The senses are bringing so much at us. So when we say this word or words, we are making this very solid commitment to using this time to explore what meditation has to offer. There's another great suggestion that another meditation teacher had suggested, actually two of them. One is that when we focus our attention at that third or single eye located between and behind the eyebrows, sometimes when we close our eyes, we really want this to work. And so we're thinking, oh, okay, I've got to bring all my focus and my attention right here. And we scrunch our eyes up and our forehead, wrinkles. And sometimes that can cause us to have a headache. So one of the suggestions is to imagine a spot about 6 or 8 inches off the bridge of our nose, where our eyes can close gently as if we're going to sleep. And by doing that, we take the pressure off of our eyes and our forehead. What we're using when we meditate are a set of inner eyes, if you will. And at first, when we sit, we're in a quiet place, as I mentioned before. We have chosen a name or names to repeat. And we repeat this name slowly with the tongue of thought. We use the idea that if a thought comes up, that the mind should take and distract the thoughts away. Here's that second suggestion. When we are sitting, composed and ready to meditate, we should imagine that there are 2 drawers, one labeled thoughts and one labeled meditation. And as we're sitting and composing ourselves and getting comfortable, if we start to have some thoughts that emerge, we imagine ourselves kind of jotting down what the thought is and opening this imaginary drawer and placing this imaginary thought into the drawer and closing the drawer and back again to our practice, our meditation practice. And if another thought comes up, we again imagine ourselves taking that thought and placing it into the drawer. Now, what can happen after we have calmed the mind enough where those thoughts aren't coming? We then make this conscious decision of opening the drawer labeled meditation. It's a powerful symbol that we give, an inner directed signal that says, this time is important. We're going to use this time to meditate. Back to the thoughts again. Some people have said to me, well, I sit down to meditate and thought after thought keeps coming. I keep opening and closing the drawer, opening and closing the drawer. Sometimes that's all I'm doing while I'm meditating. I know. Life is complicated. Things for us sometimes are very distracting. Rome wasn't built in a day. A fond old phrase that comes into play here. We have to be easy with ourselves about meditating. We have to know and understand that the benefits are there. The benefits have been determined for us. Before in texts that had been passed down for hundreds or thousands of years, and now more currently by solid medical research. If we appreciate that that is the case, and we know and understand that we can accomplish an amazing set of things simply by putting our focus and our mind, instead of something outside, to bring it to something inside, then we are well on the way to having a very successful meditative experience. So we're sitting, and we are comfortable, and our environment is quiet, and there's no food around, and there's no bright lights or activity around. And we close our eyes. Imagine that we are sitting at a door. Remember I mentioned before that all the different meditative forms are like doors opening onto this same room. Imagine that we are sitting at the door, and once we get ourselves composed, and once we begin saying our name or names, that we are literally opening that door, and we have now entered into this place. Many of the times what we're going to see is darkness in front of us. What we should do is to concentrate our attention into the middle of that darkness. Now, by that I mean when we're sitting comfortably and our heads are reasonably straight, that with our eyes closed, our vision, if you will, from our inner eyes is going to be roughly, around here. Now remember, for our outer eyes, my peripheral vision is about like that. But our inner eyes don't have that restriction. They can see in a boundless kind of way. So when we sit, we imagine that the darkness, we try and bring our focus as we're saying our name or names to that darkness, and then watch and see what happens. Here's the really interesting part about meditation: we are both the authors and the consumers of what happens during meditation, because we're making the commitment to actually sitting and doing this particular thing. But then we become the observers and we start observing particular things. And what some people experience are a different shades of light that may be happening, different colors. Sometimes these are of the darker shades, sometimes they're of the lighter shades. Sometimes they appear in swirls, and sometimes they appear in flashes. What we should do once we begin to see any of those things, or any other kinds of inner images that present themselves, is that we should keep our focus directly in the center. Sometimes something may appear as if it's in the periphery. If we keep our focus in our naturally relaxed state, that image will come to the center of where we want it to be. And we can bathe in that experience. That's where we become the consumer. So we're setting up this entire process, and then we get to enjoy this process that unfolds from within us. Sometimes people report flashes, seeing flashes of light, and sometimes, again, from the periphery. Keep your focus and your attention, and many times those flashes of light will come into your visual view. The flashes of light are really interesting because they're not really flashes at all. That light is constant. What flashes is our attention, our focus. We can't keep our focus at it long enough until we allow ourselves the process of just allowing that image to come to us and allowing the experience that happens to kind of flow over us. And many people report other kinds of experiences, other kinds of images or objects that they see during meditation. The same concept applies. Bring your attention and your focus to the center point. Allow whatever it is that's occurring to come to that point while we continue to say the name or names that we have chosen. Now, the cadence of saying the names is also important. The rhythm of how we say that. For example, I'll use the word peace and give some example about the pacing of that thing. So if I'm closing my eyes and I'm using the word peace, and again, I want this word to occupy my mind and keep my thoughts to a minimum or to keep them in the background. And so with my inner tongue, the tongue of thought, I'm going to say the word peace. 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 You'll notice that I staggered the saying of those words. That was in correspondence to thoughts that I had coming in. When we have those thoughts, it's as if we're doing that drawer thing again, where we're placing those thoughts into the drawer. But we're using the word or words that we've chosen to affect that degree of redirecting our focus. Our attention that we want to have on the meditative process is an outer expression of what we focus on. And we can uproot that attention from wherever it is in our conscious activities to this place of our choosing for whatever length of time that we choose to do this. Now, I mentioned in the study that the amount of time that the study participants used back in this 2011 study was approximately 27 minutes. Some people have asked, well, how long do you meditate? How often should you meditate? And if those people meditating 7 days a week over an 8-week period of time, using that short amount of time, can affect the kinds of, that was physical change we were talking about, not just the inner benefits, not just the physical benefits from it. What would happen if it was 35 minutes, 40, 50 minutes, 60 minutes? What happens if it were longer, a longer period of time that we use? There are going to be times when our schedules are going to be very exacting. We only have 20 minutes that we can sit and meditate. Okay. So we say we use an alarm or whatever it is that we're going to do. My suggestion is, and we all have opportunities to do this, my suggestion is to take some opportunities and not have that alarm present, to not have an end point to when you're going to meditate. Just sit, see what happens. This is a cost-free entertainment form at the very least, but an entertainment of type that will be very productive for us in terms of helping us when we come out of that meditative state to managing external things in a slightly different way. People will notice the difference after we've been meditating for, X number of days, X number of weeks. People will notice the difference, and they'll sometimes come up to us and say, "What's different? I noticed something different about you." And, depending on whether or not you want to share that experience, you can either have a smile and say whatever you want. They'll notice the difference because we'll have a slightly different means of communicating in this conscious world with our senses by giving all those senses a break, by calming them, and by using the opportunity to withdraw that energy. When we reconnect that energy, we're going to have a little better focus on the mundane activities or the work activities that we do. A little better focus on what we're doing, because that's what we're training ourselves to do when we're meditating, is doing focus. And that in turn will help us when we sit and meditate again, because we're again imposing this loving discipline, if you will, on ourselves for this particular positive effect. So, how about if we practice?
Sure.
It's a little light in here, but we'll absolutely make do. I'm going to read some meditation instructions. We'll sit for, well, actually, they told me they're open until 5 this afternoon, so maybe we can sit until then. Maybe they'll kind of move us over in a corner. Let's meditate for 15, 20 minutes. And those of you at home will do this in private, because there can be nothing more boring than have a camera sit on someone who's meditating, because they'll say nothing and do nothing. So we'll see you in a few minutes. I'm going to read these meditation instructions. When I'm done, when you stop hearing my voice, you will know that we're fully into meditation. And you can keep your eyes open while I read these instructions, or you may close them and begin. So, meditation is a process whereby we withdraw our attention from the outer world and concentrate it at one particular point in our bodies. Through this method of concentration, we can transcend physical consciousness and experience ourselves in ways that perhaps we haven't in a very long time. To practice meditation, we sit in any pose that we find most comfortable, in which we can sit for a long time without moving. We should sit so that no part of our body touches anyone, as this might disturb our concentration. We should close our eyes gently, looking straight ahead, focusing our attention into the middle of the darkness lying in front of us. That which sees the darkness is not our physical eyes, but is the third or single eye located between and behind the eyebrows. Continue to focus your attention into the middle of what you see. Please repeat any name or names that you've chosen. Repeat these names slowly with the tongue of thought. This repetition of repeating the names will keep the mind occupied and prevent it from wandering. When light or any inner vista occurs, continue to focus your attention into the middle of what you see and continue repeating the name or names that you've chosen. Please slowly open your eyes. Hi.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
You okay?
Mm-hmm.
Good. And I hope you are as well. Um, any unusual things that you'd like to talk about? And again, meditative experiences can be very private, and you don't have to talk to me or to anyone about them. Or you can share things that you found were interesting.
I found that I was kind of drifting off, not asleep, but just, which was very pleasant feeling.
Yeah. We have, when we give ourselves the opportunity to relax physically, when we're, in one place, really not doing much of anything else, we're giving the body all kinds of rest and relax signals. This is good. And since most of us are operating at some level of sleep debt or sleep deprivation, as it used to be called, the body is saying, oh, she's quiet. Oh, he's sitting or lying down, which you can do meditating. And what's going to happen is that the body's going to take advantage and say, okay, time for sleep, time for rest.
Yeah, but I was awake, but it was like,
Mm-hmm. It's
Yeah.
that kind of suspended state in between.
yeah,
And it's
nice
very-
state. I also found that, I know you had said to keep your head like straight up.
Mm-hmm.
My head kept going down.
Mm-hmm. Fatigue.
Okay,
It's just fatigue.
okay.
The tendency, once again, for this 8 to 10 pound bowling ball that we carry around on our necks is for it to pull forward as we're relaxing. Our shoulders kind of come forward. And sometimes we can notice that and get ourselves back into a posture where
So
we're
I should-
sitting
I
straight
should
up. If
put
we
it
notice
back
it.
up
If
okay.
we notice it. The other reason for that is that it helps to have when the spine and the head and the neck are positioned properly, there's the correct amount of rest that can happen in the body when we're at that place. Sometimes we have to work in order to get that, to that place. But if you notice that your head's drooping, you're probably tired, and you should probably go take a nap.
I also noticed that I could hear voices in the background, but they weren't like interfering.
Excellent. That
was
is
very
excellent.
pleasant too.
It's there's an interesting thing that happens when our focus is not on the outer. We still experience things, and it's kind of important to know that we're not totally cut off when we're meditating. We are still in our environment, but the environment doesn't seem to dominate the way that it does when our eyes are open and when we're engaging, with people in the outer environment.
Yeah.
So it's still going on, but it's as though we've turned the intensity of the experience, or our senses focusing on them, to a much lower level.
It was a nice break.
It is. It is a nice break.
Yeah. Like
Um,
even in terms of like now I'm observing everything around me, and that was there, which was
mm-hmm.
nice.
Mm-hmm. It's a there are one of the other questions that comes up that people have is about the breathing, and I should have mentioned this before. I did mention about certain meditations. In Jyoti meditation, we let the breathing go. We just let the breathing do naturally what it does. Um, we we don't have to remind ourselves to breathe while we're sleeping and while we're going about our activities during the day, and that's typically what happens. Um, People have also asked, well, is there a special time of the day that I should meditate? And we know ourselves, we know our schedules, and we know what the relative amount of activity is in the places where we live. For many people, meditating in the early morning hours is excellent, before much activity gets going. There's a general quiet that exists in most people's homes in the early morning hours. It's very conducive to meditating. The idea would be that you awaken and you know, splash some water on your face, and some people actually like in preparation to do some stretching or to, you know, sing a hymn, all in preparation for you sitting and then, you know, sitting quietly. For some of us, it's midday. Our schedules are such that midday is a really good time to meditate. And then there's the night owls. You know who you are. You know, the ones who about 9:30, when the rest of us are starting to decline, you're just starting to feel that push and that surge. Sometimes that's a really good time for people who are night owls to meditate. The point is, we should we should experience whatever time. We should know that we can meditate any time that we want. There are an experiment with different times, because you may have a different kind of experience at a different, you know, time of the day or night. There is no hard and fast place or time to do meditation. Um, the the process sometimes will be that we close our eyes. You know, everything is fine, everything is arranged, and we close our eyes and we see the darkness in front of us, and we start our process. The doorway opens and we see darkness. And sometimes we see darkness for long periods of time. It can be very frustrating because we want to experience something. Know this for certain, that the very act of committing to the quiet that we bring to ourselves, the occupying of the mind the discipline, if you will, that we bring to ourselves, begins to give us the benefits of meditation right from that very moment. We don't have to have exploring inner visions in order for us to feel that we are accomplishing something with meditation. We accomplish something even when we're sitting and we observe darkness in front of us, because it's the commitment to the process that begins. That's the opening of the door. And wherever the experience takes us, we can know that we are accomplishing something, and accomplishing something very significant right away. The I'm going to give you some instructions to take with you, which will be very helpful for you. One for you, sir. Um, these instructions will help to refresh some of what we've done. Educational psychologists talk about the retaining of information, whether it's new information or not. And if you are able to, later this afternoon, this evening, even tomorrow morning, if you're able to meditate and practice the things that we have done today, your chances of retaining the kind of the quality and the flavor of what we've done here, 90% or better.
Wow.
That's a very high number. And it just indicates that you solidify the experience. And know for certain that meditation is a practice. And by practice, it means that we have to put the time in. The more time that we put into this, like any other discipline, the more we will benefit or receive from it. But I wanted to make that point about the benefits that start coming to us immediately because we think that we don't. Again, we're very results oriented, we're very focused on, well, what is this going to do for me? Know for certain that when we make that commitment, it's already happening. It's already started. And that we are improving not only our sense of peace, our inner sense of peace, but as I mentioned before, we're going to radiate that to people outside of us. You know, long ago somebody said that peace is an inner game. It starts with us. It starts with us having a particular different outlook and attitude, an uprooting, if you will, of our attention from one point to another. When we do that, we start to benefit from that immediately. So, I thank you for your attention. I thank you for coming. I thank you for your attention, and hope we can meet again sometime soon.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Oh, sure. Sure.
Um, is it ever used as a prelude to sleep?
Oh,
'Cause
yes.
I mean, I feel so peaceful now.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's just really, okay, all right. Because I'm the kind of person that I'm up in the morning, I tell the sun it's time to rise and get going here. I'm the first one on the unit at my nursing station before the night shift is even left, you know? So mornings would not be a good time for me personally,
Mhm.
but at night this, I mean, it's very pleasant. It was very, very pleasant, that 20 minutes or 15 minutes.
Mhm.
Very nice. Not to have to see the environment, to be here, but not to, see all the beautiful things around me, the photographs and all
It's
that
true.
stuff. Very, very nice. The other thing, what are your thoughts about labyrinths? Because I've gone to a labyrinth meditation, totally failed in the meditating part, because I was just, I couldn't, but I could see that, walking as you're meditating.
Mhm.
I mean, not that I could not. I was just thinking about, oh, it was freezing cold. I hope I didn't trip any of the roots here. Uh, just like, but I see it as a physical thing that could maybe help you center in, even though I couldn't do it. I tried it twice, 2 years in a row, on New Year's Eve. I did an inside labyrinth, I did an outside labyrinth, but there has to be something there about the labyrinth, right?
Well, there is for certain people who can focus and concentrate while they are in an external environment,
Okay.
Protected external environment. There's a particular kind of experience that can be had. I know I can't do it.
Okay.
It's just much too
Good, I'm not feeling
distracting.
it.
For all of those reasons
Yeah.
that you said and many others.
Yeah.
Because there's too much engagement that we have, in all of those different things that are going on. Um, when I was first taught Jyoti meditation many years ago, it was encouraged that we do just the opposite, that
Okay.
we don't give the mind or the body any excuse to introduce thoughts, to give any kind of distractions.
Okay.
And that I know that I couldn't do an external or a walking meditation, but Thoreau has obviously proven that this, he and Emerson and the transcendentalists back then have certainly proven that the idea of being at one with nature and moving, in nature, can have boundless benefits for people. Uh, they're called walking meditations. Thoreau would speak about having a kind of a transcendental experience being in nature, um, and I know some people who do that, and I know that it's very successful for them. I just know that it's not for me.
Yeah, okay, me neither, and I sort of like to, mention it to you, because I'm like, no, this is so, when I was thinking about coming today, I'm like, well, I tried the labyrinth stuff, but let's try this,
Good.
so, and it's been very, very wonderful.
Good. I'm
Thank you
really
very
glad
much,
you
very
came.
helpful. Thank you, doctor.